If you want to understand why the tingling in your hands and feet keeps coming back, do not look at your spine and do not spend another dollar on circulation creams. The answer is living in your blood in a single nutrient your body has quietly run out of, and it is destroying your nerves one slow month at a time. Come closer, my children. What I have to share today may change everything you thought you knew about this. Most of you watching have been told this is simply aging, wear and tear, the normal price of getting older. Your doctor, bless their heart, had perhaps 12 minutes with you, ordered a nerve conduction study, handed you a pamphlet, and sent you home. But what is quietly working against your nervous system from the inside does not come in a pill bottle from the pharmacy. It does not appear on the standard blood panel most doctors run unless someone specifically requests it. And by the time the damage becomes clearly visible on a test, the deficiency has often been building for 3, 4, 5 years without anyone catching it. I have sat across from good, strong people who lost sensation. They never fully recovered because no one asked the right question early enough. If you are living with that burning, that buzzing, those pins and needles that wake you at night, I need you to stay with me all the way to the end. What I am going to share could give your nervous system back to you. My name is Mama Aisha Diallo. For over 40 years, I have served my community through the plant medicine my grandmother passed down to me, knowledge she carried from the Fudajalan highlands of Guinea and that I deepened through time spent with Caribbean bush doctors and the gula root workers of the American South. My grandmother told me, and her mother had told her the same thing before that. All sickness begins in the belly. When the belly cannot receive what it is given, the whole body begins to starve, no matter how much you put into it. She was speaking about the gut, about the living community inside it, and how it governs our immunity, our inflammation, our nerves, and the quality of our sleep. The elders knew this long before any laboratory gave it a name. The kitchen has always been our first pharmacy. My mother practiced this, her mother before her, the women and men of our community, raised in those highlands and scattered later across the diaspora, rarely lost the feeling in their hands the way I see happening so often now. I have watched 5 generations of our people move through their 70s and into their 80s with steady hands and warm feet. The researchers are beginning to ask why. The tradition already knows the answer. Before I take you through everything, I want you to know that one of the things I am about to share will surprise 9 out of 10 of you because you have been focused on entirely the wrong piece of this problem. The order in which I present these things matters. Each piece builds on the one before it. If you step in at the middle, you will miss the bridge that holds the whole protocol together. Watch from here to the end. The most important piece comes last, and it is the one that makes everything else actually work. Before we go further, I want to ask something of you. Drop a comment right now and tell me your age. And tell me how long you have been living with tingling or numbness in your hands or your feet. I read every single comment on this channel, every single one. What you share with me shapes what I bring to this community next. Your story matters to me. Here is what we are covering today. I am going to show you the single nutrient most people over 60 have quietly run out of and exactly why your body is absorbing far less of it than you think, even when you take it every day. I am going to reveal a common morning habit that makes this deficiency worse on a daily basis, and most people do it before they have opened their eyes all the way. I am going to walk you through 4 hidden forces that are actively draining this nutrient from your body. I am going to share the fermented preparations my grandmother made every winter to protect the nervous system in ways our people understood long before any science arrived to explain it. And then I am going to give you the master recovery step, the one thing I reach for before anything else, the piece that finally allows everything else in this protocol to take hold. My people, one quick thing before we continue. If you have not subscribed yet, would you do me that small favor? It takes 2 seconds, and many of the folks who find the most value here tell me later they did not realize they were not already subscribed. Your subscription helps this teaching reach more seniors who need it. It costs you nothing at all. Now let us talk about what is truly happening in your body. You wake at 2 in the morning and your hands feel like they belong to someone else. You shake them out, the sensation slowly returns, and you try to go back to sleep. Or maybe it is your feet, that crawling, buzzing feeling in the toes that moves up toward the ankle when you have been sitting too long. You set something on the counter and it slips because the fingers did not grip the way they used to. The floor feels padded under your feet in the morning, like something soft is between you and the ground when there is nothing there. Some of you have been told this is neuropathy. Some of you have been told it is early arthritis, poor circulation, or simply what happens at your age. I want you to hear me on this. These experiences are real, and they are your body sending a signal from deep inside the blood from a deficiency so common in people over 60 that I have come to call it a quiet epidemic in our community. The hidden cause is a vitamin. But the story is more complicated than simply taking more of it, and that is where most people get lost. The nutrient is vitamin B12, the one your body uses to build and protect the myelin sheath, the coating that wraps around every nerve the way rubber insulation wraps an electrical wire. When that coating begins to thin, signals traveling between your brain and your hands and feet start to misfire. The tingling, the burning, the numbness, those are all misfires. Those are your nervous system telling you the wire has been exposed. Here is what is most often overlooked. After age 60, the stomach begins to produce less of a protein called intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is what allows the wall of the small intestine to reach out and pull B12 from the food you eat, grabbing it and carrying it into the bloodstream. Without enough of it, you can eat beef liver every week and take a B12 capsule every morning, and your body will still absorb only a small fraction of what you swallow. The rest passes through and leaves. The nerve sheaths continue to thin. The tingling continues to spread. I have watched this pattern in my community for decades. A woman eats well, takes her vitamins faithfully, and still loses sensation in her feet. Nobody examines how much she is actually absorbing. They look only at what she is taking in. The gap between those two things is where the real damage lives. Research spanning more than a decade of following older adults has found that upward of 40% of those over 60 show low or borderline B12 levels on standard blood panels. And that number likely undercounts the true picture because the reference ranges were built for younger bodies. The laboratories have been slowly arriving at numbers our tradition had been watching quietly for generations. My grandmother would have nodded and said, yes, that is what we saw when the old ways of eating were let go. A word of care here. If you are managing diabetes, if you take metformin, or if you are on medication for acid reflux, please speak with your doctor about your B12 levels specifically. These medications accelerate this deficiency significantly, and your doctor may not have thought to check. Now let us talk about the 4 forces that make this worse. The first force is acid suppression. Many people over 60 have been on a proton pump inhibitor or an antacid for years, often indefinitely. Stomach acid is what releases B12 from food in the first place. It frees the vitamin from the proteins binding it inside meat and eggs and fish. When you suppress that acid year after year, B12 stays locked inside the food and passes right through. The gut wall never has a chance to reach it. I think of Raymond, 68 years old, a retired firefighter from Chattanooga, Tennessee. He came to me after being told his tingling was age-related neuropathy, essentially permanent. When I asked about his medications, I learned he had been on a proton pump inhibitor for 8 years for acid reflux. What had been overlooked entirely was that his reflux was likely a sign of low stomach acid, not high, a reversal that becomes increasingly common after 60. We worked alongside his doctor to gently address the suppression while rebuilding his acid environment through bitter herbs and a fermented tonic routine. By week 8, Raymond reported that the tingling in his left hand had eased by roughly 50% based on the daily log he kept, and the grip had visibly strengthened. He told me at our next visit, Mama Aisha, I had started to believe I would just live with this forever. I forgot this could change. The second force is chronic inflammation along the gut wall. When the lining of the digestive tract is persistently irritated, whether from years of processed food, from long use of anti-inflammatory medications, or from elevated stress hormones, the surface area available for absorption shrinks. Picture the inside of your gut as a field of tall grass reaching upward to catch nutrients as they pass. When inflammation flattens that field year after year, fewer nutrients are pulled in, and B12 is among the first to suffer. The third force is the collapse of the gut's microbial community, and this is the one most misunderstood. After 60, the diversity of beneficial bacteria in the gut declines significantly. Research spanning years of observing older populations has found we can lose close to 40% of that microbial diversity by our 70s compared to what we carried in our 40s, though our tradition already knew the gut needed constant tending throughout life to hold its strength. And here's where so many people make the same mistake. They take a probiotic and believe the work is done. But probiotics without prebiotic fiber are seeds dropped on dry ground. The bacteria have nothing to eat and cannot survive long enough to do their work. And then there is a third piece that most people have never heard of: postbiotics. These are the actual healing compounds the bacteria produce when they are well fed and thriving. The fermentation byproducts that reduce inflammation along the gut lining, help seal the wall, and restore the surface's capacity to absorb nutrients. Probiotics, prebiotics, and postbiotics must all work together. One without the other two is like planting seeds in solid stone. All three must be present for the gut to truly recover its ability to receive what you give it. The old fermented preparations the women in my family kept on their shelves were doing all three long before science had a word for any of it. The fourth force is sustained stress. When the body carries low-grade chronic stress, cortisol remains elevated, and elevated cortisol depletes the B vitamins at an accelerated rate. It also disrupts sleep, which is when the gut does much of its deepest repair. For many of my people who have carried the weight of hard years, this force is not small. It must be acknowledged alongside everything else. I want to pause here for a moment. My folks ask me often what I personally reach for when the gut needs rebuilding. None of the practices I am sharing today do their full work if the body is fighting a hidden fire of chronic inflammation underneath. That fire roots in the gut. And when the gut is depleted, nutrients move through without being received. This is what I have landed on for that foundation. It is called BoochBod, a kombucha gummy, berry bliss flavor, not a pill, which matters for a lot of us who struggle with capsules. It brings together prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics in one daily formula, including 2 clinically studied strains, Lactospore and Postbiotics LM1004. It carries dandelion root and slippery elm, plants my grandmother brewed into deep cleansing tonics every spring in the highlands to wake the digestion after a long winter. Over 30,000 people are now using it daily. The link is in the description below. And please speak to your doctor before starting any supplement. Now let us continue, because the master recovery step is where everything finally starts to shift. And now we arrive at the most important part of everything I have shared today. The master step is not a single food, and it is not a single pill. It is a specific combination of ancestral practices that the tradition understood to work together, centered on fermented moringa preparations taken in a particular sequence that allows B12 and its co-nutrients to actually reach the tissues where the repair needs to happen. Here is the mechanism. B12 does not do its repair work alone. It requires folate and vitamin B6 alongside it to complete the process that protects the myelin sheath. These three function as a team. When any one of them is missing or poorly absorbed, the others cannot close the loop. The repair stalls. Traditional West African and Gullah foodways kept all three moving through the body through fermented greens, bitter herb preparations, and moringa leaf, which contains bioavailable B vitamins, folate, and iron, in a form the gut wall recognizes and accepts more readily than a synthetic capsule. The bitterness of the herb is not a flaw. Bitter compounds stimulate the liver and the gallbladder, which in turn prime the gut lining for better uptake of both fat-soluble and water-soluble nutrients. This was what my grandmother brewed in her kitchen each morning before the rest of the house woke. 5 generations of women in our tradition kept their nervous systems whole doing this. Research has since confirmed that moringa's B vitamin content and its anti-inflammatory compounds are measurable and meaningful. The laboratories came to what the Futa Jalon already knew. The women who raised me were not surprised. I think of Dorothy, 71 years old, a retired school teacher from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. She came to me after 3 years of worsening tingling in both hands, having seen 4 different doctors. She had been told peripheral neuropathy, likely permanent. What had been overlooked completely was her absorption capacity. She had been on a proton pump inhibitor for 6 years, and her gut's microbial community was severely depleted. We started with the fermented moringa tonic first, added folate-rich bitter greens 3 times a week, and rebuilt the absorption environment before we introduced anything else. By week 10, Dorothy had returned to her needlework, her grip having come back enough to manage the fine thread. By month 4, she told me her feet felt warm in the morning for the first time in years. "Mama Aisha," she said, "I feel like I got my hands back." Her B12 levels on retest had risen by 31%. The practical protocol works as follows. Steep 2 teaspoons of dried moringa leaf in water around 175 degrees, not at a full boil, for 8 to 10 minutes each morning. Boiling drives off the most delicate compounds. Drink it 20 minutes before your first meal. Alongside it, take a small glass of water with 1 teaspoon of raw apple cider vinegar to prime stomach acid before eating. 3 times a week, add bitter greens to your largest meal. Arugula, dandelion greens, or mustard greens carry the folate that completes the B12 cycle. If you are supplementing B12 directly, choose the sublingual methylcobalamin form, the kind that dissolves under the tongue and absorbs directly into the bloodstream, bypassing the intrinsic factor problem entirely. Hold it under the tongue for a full 60 seconds before swallowing. After more than 40 years of watching what actually holds in older bodies, here are the insider principles I return to again and again. Tip 1. Timing is everything. Sublingual B12 works best taken in the morning before food, held under the tongue a full 60 seconds. Many people dissolve it for 5 seconds and wonder why their levels do not budge. Tip 2. Consistency over heroics. A small daily practice outperforms a large occasional one. 2 tablespoons of naturally fermented food every morning, plain kefir, live culture sauerkraut, or a small cup of unsweetened kombucha does more over 3 months than a high-dose supplement taken sporadically 3 times a week. Tip 3. The absorption amplifier. Taking the moringa tonic alongside a few bites of healthy fat, a quarter of an avocado, or a drizzle of good olive oil noticeably increases uptake of the fat-soluble compounds in the preparation. Fat opens the door. Tip 4. The quality signal. Fresh, properly dried moringa powder turns a vivid green when steeped in hot water. If it stays dull brown, the leaf has oxidized and lost most of what you paid for. Buy from sources that seal in nitrogen and store it away from light and heat. Now let us look at 3 mistakes that undo all of this. Mistake 1. Relying on the standard blood test alone to tell you whether you are deficient. The reference range for B12 in most labs was built on younger populations. A result that reads as borderline normal at age 68 may represent a genuine functional deficiency in an older body. Ask your doctor specifically for a methylmalonic acid test, which shows whether B12 is actually being used at the cellular level, not just present in the bloodstream. Mistake 2. Taking cyanocobalamin. This is the synthetic form of B12 in most inexpensive supplements. The body must convert it into a usable form before it can do anything, and that conversion becomes sluggish and unreliable after 60. The methylcobalamin form arrives already in the active state your tissues need. It costs a little more and is worth every cent for someone dealing with nerve symptoms. Mistake 3. Stopping too soon. Nerve tissue heals slowly. Many people begin to notice change within 4 to 6 weeks of consistent practice, but full recovery of sensation can take 6 months to a year. I have watched people stop at 3 weeks, feel nothing yet, and walk away at exactly the moment the body was about to respond. My children, before we close, I want you to sit with something. The tingling in your hands, the numbness in your feet, these are not signs that your body has given up on you. They are signs that your body is still asking for something it has not been given. The body at 70, at 75, at 80 is still reaching, still capable of repair that medicine so often forgets to mention. What we have been covering today is your mornings. It is the ability to hold your grandchildren's hands without them slipping. It is walking to the garden in October and feeling the earth beneath your feet. It is being fully present in your own life, not watching it from a distance through the fog of diminished sensation. It is never too late, baby. I have watched women and men in their 80s recover, feeling they had written off as gone permanently. The body remembers what it is supposed to do. Give it what it needs, and it reaches back toward health with everything it has. Let me lock this in for you. First, the tingling and numbness are your nerve sheaths thinning from a B12 deficiency driven primarily by absorption failure in the aging gut, not simply by low intake. Second, the hidden cause is the loss of intrinsic factor after 60, which prevents B12 from reaching the bloodstream even when you eat well and supplement faithfully. Third, four forces are accelerating the problem each day: acid suppression medications, chronic inflammation along the gut lining, collapsed bacterial diversity, and sustained cortisol from ongoing stress. Fourth, the Master Recovery Protocol combines daily fermented moringa tonic, sublingual methylcobalamin held under the tongue a full minute, bitter folate-rich greens 3 times a week, and a rebuilt gut foundation that finally allows absorption to happen the way it was always meant to. If this reached you today, subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. And share this with someone you love, your spouse, your oldest friend, the sibling who has been dropping things for years and has no idea why. Leave me a comment and tell me which piece of this protocol you are starting first. I read every single comment on this channel, and I will do my best to write back to as many of you as I can. And if you want to take a look at BoochBod, the link from earlier in this video is waiting for you in the description below whenever you are ready. Until next time, my people, keep feeding your body what the old ways always knew it needed. This is Mama Aisha Diallo, and I will see you soon.